The arrival in the medical bay. The medical bay of the star station was never quiet, but that night it carried a strange tension. The air was filled with the low hum of machines, the hiss of oxygen pumps, and the hurried footsteps of nurses moving from one patient to another. But all sounds seemed to fade when the doors opened and two soldiers rushed in, carrying an unconscious man on a stretcher. The man looked human, but not like any human they had ever seen. His body was covered in scars, deep lines carved into his skin as if he had been broken and healed 100 times over. Blood clung to his uniform, torn and burned. The soldiers placed him on the medical table, shouting for the doctors to hurry. Dr. Alara, the chief medic, pushed past her team and leaned over the patient. Her eyes widened. She had seen plasma burns, blade wounds, and even alien toxin damage, but these marks were different. They were not fresh injuries. They were old, layered scars, some glowing faintly under the sterile white lights. "Vitals unstable," one nurse called, attaching wires to his chest. The screen flashed red, numbers dropping. The team worked quickly, injecting stabilizers. Preparing the scanner, the soldiers stood back. Whispering, one muttered, "He shouldn't be alive. Not after what we saw out there." The other nodded, his face pale. "He took direct hits, but he kept standing. We thought he was gone. But then we found him like this, still breathing." Dr. Alara glanced at them. Confusion in her eyes. Humans could not survive direct plasma strikes. Not without armor. Yet this man had, and his body carried proof of many more battles long past. The scanner hummed as it lowered above him. Lights flickered, beams swept across his body. But instead of neat results, the machine stuttered. The screen filled with static, then random symbols before going black. "System error," the nurse gasped. "It's never done this before." Dr. Alara's heart raced. She ordered the machine restarted, but the same thing happened. Static. Strange glyphs, then darkness. The patient groaned softly. His lips moving, no words came out. Just a sound that made the hairs on their necks rise. "Did you hear that?" One medic whispered, "That wasn't standard. That was something else." Alara leaned closer. She thought she heard fragments of a language, old and rough. A tongue that scratched at memory but could not be placed. She shook her head, trying to focus. "Stabilize him first. We can ask questions later." The nurses worked, applying healing foam to burns, stitching torn flesh, but the scars resisted. The foam slid off as if the skin rejected it. The wounds pulsed faintly, glowing like embers under ash. "What kind of scars are these?" Another nurse asked, fear in her voice. Alara didn't answer. She didn't know. She only knew they did not belong to any soldier she had ever treated. The unconscious man's breathing slowed, then steadied. His chest rose and fell. Calm now, but the silence was heavy. Every eye in the room stared at his body, at the scars that seemed alive, telling a story no one could read. In the corner, one young medic whispered the thought that chilled them all. What if he isn't just a soldier? What if he's something else? The words lingered in the air. The soldiers said nothing, their eyes fixed on the man who should have been dead but wasn't. Dr. Alara turned to the scanner again, her mind racing. Machines didn't just fail, especially not medical scanners designed to read every known life form. For it to show strange symbols, to crash twice, it meant the patient was outside everything recorded. "Run a DNA test," she ordered. Her voice sharp, the nurse obeyed, inserting a blood sample. The machine processed, then paused. The screen flickered once more, not with results, but with another string of unreadable glyphs, and then it froze. Alara felt her stomach twist. She had seen systems reject unknown alien DNA, but this was different. It wasn't rejection. It was recognition of something forbidden. "Doctor," the nurse said softly, "do you think he's human?" Alara looked back at the man on the table. His face was calm, almost peaceful despite the battle scars. He looked human. Eyes closed, chest rising, but his body told a story of endless war. His scars were not simply wounds, they were records. The lights in the bay flickered, as if the station itself felt the weight of his presence. The machines around him beeped and hissed, unstable. as though disturbed by something ancient. Alara stood frozen, her hand hovering over his chest. "I don't know what he is," she whispered. "But he is not just a man." The soldiers shifted uncomfortably, their earlier whispers coming back. They had seen him take fire no one could survive. They had watched him bleed and yet rise again. Now the medics stared, their fear mixing with awe. The man was alive. Against every law of medicine, his scars were a mystery, his presence an unanswered question, and as the machines flickered again, displaying a final string of symbols before shutting down, one thought echoed in every mind in that cold medical bay. Who was he, and why was he still alive? The scars that shouldn't exist. The medical bay grew quiet after the failed scans. The machines had never betrayed the medics before, yet now they stood powerless. Every pair of eyes turned back to the man on the table. His chest rose and fell in slow rhythm, each breath steady, but his body remained a puzzle that no science could solve. His scars seemed to glow faintly under the cold lights. Like old embers refusing to die, Dr. Alara moved closer, her gloved hands hovering above his chest. She resisted the urge to touch the strange markings. It was against protocol, but her instincts screamed that these were no ordinary scars. They were not random, not the result of accidents or single battles. They followed patterns, some curved like ancient symbols, some straight like burns from weapons no longer in use. She could not look away, as though the man's body carried a secret carved in flesh. The younger medics gathered around her, their voices trembling as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "These scars are old, older than anything I've seen," one whispered. "But how can old scars glow like this? Scars fade, they don't shine." Another medic shook his head. "Maybe it's nanotech inside his skin. Maybe he's enhanced." But even as he spoke, his words carried no weight, because none of them had ever seen enhancements like this. Alara gave a quiet command, and one of the nurses dimmed the lights. At once the glow of the scars became sharper, brighter. Each scar shimmered faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. It was almost as if his body itself rejected death, refusing to let go of the life inside him. A heavy silence settled in the room as everyone watched, unease spreading like a shadow. The soldiers who had brought him shifted nervously at the sight. One of them spoke in a low voice. "He fought like no one we've ever seen. We thought he was dead 3 times, but every time he stood up again. His body looked broken, but he kept moving, kept fighting. He didn't even scream." The soldiers' words carried weight, making the medics glance at each other. Humans did not endure plasma burns in silence, not unless something far beyond ordinary strength drove them. Dr. Alara finally touched one of the scars with the tip of her glove. The skin felt hot, far warmer than a normal human body. Her eyes widened. This was no infection, no malfunction. The scars were alive. Each one carried heat and energy, something pulsing deep inside, like echoes of battles long past that had never fully ended. She drew her hand back quickly, unsettled. Her mind raced with possibilities, yet every answer only raised more questions. "Prepare a secondary analysis," she ordered. "No scanners, will go manual." The medics hesitated. They relied on machines for nearly everything, but Alara's voice carried authority. They fetched old diagnostic tools, devices rarely used anymore, blood tests, tissue samplers, even ancient stethoscopes were brought out. For a moment it felt as though the medics had stepped back centuries, relying on their own hands and senses rather than technology. The blood sample shimmered strangely under the light. Dark, but with an odd metallic sheen. One nurse gasped. "It doesn't look human." Alara leaned over. Her brows furrowed. The blood clung to the glass as if alive, refusing to flow normally. She had treated humans, aliens, hybrids, but nothing behaved like this. The tissue sample was even more disturbing when examined. The cells showed layers upon layers of scar tissue, stacked like stone walls. It was as if his body had rebuilt itself countless times. Each injury healed, but instead of fading, the scars became stronger, denser. His flesh itself was a fortress. Alara spoke softly, almost to herself. His body remembers every battle, and it refuses to forget." The words hung in the air. The medics looked at her with confusion and fear, but deep down they all felt the truth of it. The unconscious man stirred, his head shifting slightly, his lips moved, and this time a faint word escaped. The sound was not in standard, nor in any common alien tongue. It was old, rough, and heavy with weight. The medics froze. Glancing at each other in silence, no one understood. Yet all felt the power in the single whispered word. "Doctor," one medic said with a trembling voice, "we need to report this. This is beyond us." Alara shook her head sharply. "Not yet. If we report him now, the council will take him. And we'll never know the truth. We need more time, more answers." Her words carried both fear and determination. She could feel in her bones that the man on the table was more than a soldier. More than a patient, he was a mystery that could shake everything they thought they knew. The nurses exchanged worried looks. Some obeyed silently, others hesitated. But all knew that to defy the council was dangerous. Yet, at the same time, to hand him over too soon might mean losing something far greater. The man's breathing grew heavier, his chest rising and falling with deep force. His scars glowed brighter, their light reflecting in the eyes of everyone around him. And for the first time, Alara felt not just curiosity or fear, but something else. Reverence, as if she stood in the presence of a relic, not of stone or metal, but of flesh, a living piece of history carved by time itself. The medical bay felt colder, even though the machines hummed steadily. No one spoke. No one dared. The scars seemed to whisper on their own, their glow painting the walls with shadows that moved. Each line and mark was a story untold, and every eye that looked upon them knew one thing with certainty. These scars did not belong in this time. They belonged to a man who should not exist. And as the night deepened around the star station, the medics worked in silence, aware that their patient was not simply wounded. He was a puzzle, a danger, and perhaps a prophecy made flesh. The first scan failure. The medical bay had seen many strange cases before, but nothing like this. By the third hour, unease had settled over every medic, every nurse, every assistant. Even the soldiers who had brought him kept glancing at the man on the table as if he might open his eyes and tear down the station with his bare hands. His body lay still, but the scars glowed faintly, flickering like dying embers that refused to be extinguished, and the room itself seemed to respond to him, the machines giving irregular beeps, the lights humming in uncertain tones. Dr. Alara knew she had reached the limit of what manual testing could provide. The blood shimmered unnaturally, the tissue samples defied logic, and the scars themselves seemed like a living language carved into flesh. But none of that gave her answers. Answers required the high-level scanner, the one system that could read histories, genetic codes, and even cellular memories. Yet the memory of its earlier failure still haunted her. The screen had not merely gone dark, it had shown symbols, ancient glyphs, something no machine should ever display. She hesitated for a long moment, staring at the silent device before finally ordering, "Prepare the scanner again." The nurses froze, one even shaking his head. "Doctor, it failed twice. It could overload. It could damage itself." She met his eyes, her voice calm but firm. "Then we will replace it. We cannot stop now. We need to know what he is." Her authority left no room for argument, and though the staff were frightened, they obeyed. The scanner lowered once more above the patient, its beams tracing across his scarred body. The room held its breath. Nurses gripped the edges of their consoles, and the soldiers folded their arms tightly as if bracing themselves. For a few seconds, the machine hummed normally, lights moving in smooth rhythm across the man's chest. His arms, his face, for a brief moment it seemed almost ordinary, as though the earlier failures had been nothing but chance. But then the hum shifted, low and heavy, as if something deep inside the machine resisted. The lights flickered, then froze. The screen erupted into chaos. Symbols appeared again, brighter and sharper than before. They scrolled across the display, twisting and reshaping, as if alive. No one in the room recognized them, but all felt their weight. They were not random, they were deliberate. The language was old, older than any known empire. The youngest nurse backed away, whispering, "This is wrong, this is not a scan, this is recognition." Her words echoed through the silent bay, and Alara's heart pounded. She knew the nurse was right. Machines did not invent symbols, they reported data. If the scanner was showing this language, it was because something inside the man had triggered it. Something the machine was built to remember, even if the people who built it had long forgotten. Alarms suddenly blared, red lights filled the room. The scanner's systems overloaded, sparks flew from its sides, and the entire console powered down, leaving the display frozen on one final message. 4 words burned across the screen, sharp and clear: "Survivor of Civilization X." The room erupted in gasps. Fear and disbelief mixed in every voice. One medic stumbled back against the wall, another whispered prayers. The soldiers' faces went pale. One of them muttered, "That's impossible, they were destroyed. They were erased from the galaxy centuries ago." His voice carried both terror and awe. Dr. Alara stared at the words on the screen. Her throat tightened. She had studied fragments of history, whispers of the so-called Civilization X, a race so feared and admired that entire alliances had united to wipe them out. The records claimed they had been eradicated. Every last trace burned from existence. But now, lying on her table, was a man whose very scars defied extinction. The unconscious patient stirred again. His lips moved, this time forming a clearer sound. The language was strange yet powerful. The nurses froze, listening to the alien syllables. Though none understood them, it was not a groan, not a cry of pain. It was deliberate, as though he spoke a name or a vow. His scars pulsed with light in perfect rhythm with the sound, and the room seemed to shiver with it. The soldiers exchanged looks of unease. Their training had prepared them for war, for death, but not for this. They were in the presence of something they had been told could never exist. One of them finally said what everyone else was thinking. If he is what the machine says, then why is he here, and why now? Alara could not answer. Her mind raced with questions. If this man was truly from Civilization X, then how had he survived the Purge? What battles had carved these scars into him? What war had burned his people to ash yet left him alive? And most of all, what would his survival mean for the galaxy? The silence that followed was heavy. Only the faint hum of backup systems filled the air. The scanner was ruined, its circuits smoking, but its message remained clear, burned into their memory. The man on the table was not just a soldier, not just a human. He was a living ghost, a survivor from a past the galaxy had sworn was gone. The young medic whispered again, her voice trembling. "Doctor, if the Council finds out, they will take him. They will not let him live." Alara's jaw tightened. She knew it was true. The Council feared Civilization X more than anything. They had erased every record, destroyed every relic, punished anyone who dared to even speak their name. If they discovered he still lived, they would silence him before his story could spread. But Alara's eyes hardened. She looked at the unconscious man, his scars glowing faintly, his breathing steady. "Then we don't tell them." "Not yet," she said, her voice firm. "This man carries truths we cannot let vanish again." The soldiers looked at her in shock, the nurses in fear, yet none dared to argue, because deep inside they all knew the same thing. History itself had just risen from the ashes on their table, and the galaxy would never be the same. The hidden memory in the machine. The medical bay was wrapped in silence after the failed scan. The frozen words, "Survivor of Civilization X," still glowed faintly on the burnt-out screen, etched into every mind present. No one dared to speak too loudly, as if even their voices might awaken something best left undisturbed. The patient lay still on the table, his scars dimming now, yet the memory of their glow lingered like fire hidden beneath ash. Dr. Alara stood with her arms crossed, her thoughts racing. For years, she had dismissed the myths of Civilization X as exaggerated tales, stories designed to frighten children or justify the harsh rule of the Council, but now those myths lay breathing before her, Wrapped in broken flesh that should not have survived, her eyes moved to the ruined scanner, smoke curling from its vents. She realized it had not only failed, it had revealed something it should never have known. Alara ordered the damaged console to be removed, yet when the assistants tried to disconnect it, the machine resisted, its circuits glowed faintly. As though refusing to die, the display flickered once, then twice, and without warning it surged back to life for a final time. Everyone froze. Nurses gasped. Soldiers instinctively reached for their sidearms. Though weapons meant nothing against machines, the screen did not show diagnostics or medical charts. Instead, it displayed images, fragmented memories, ghostly shapes of cities that no one recognized. The first image was a skyline of towering black structures rising into storm clouds, their peaks burning with crimson fire. Then came the vision of warriors clad in dark armor, their faces hidden, standing tall against waves of alien armies. The next flash revealed destruction. Entire fleets reduced to dust. Planets burning, skies filled with endless war. The images shifted quickly, too fast for full comprehension, but clear enough to leave the medics trembling. Civilization X had not been ordinary. They had been giants of war, and their fall had been apocalyptic. One nurse covered her mouth, whispering, "The machine is remembering." But machines do not remember. Her words sent chills down every spine. Dr. Alara stepped closer, her face lit by the pale glow of the screen. "This is not the machine," she whispered. "This is him." The realization struck her deeply. The patient's body was feeding the system images, not from flesh, but from something deeper. Perhaps his scars were more than wounds. Perhaps they were memory itself. Carved into him as a living archive, the man stirred again, his chest rising with sudden force. His eyes remained closed, but his lips parted, and a stream of words poured out in that same alien tongue. His voice was low, yet carried a strange authority. The screen reacted instantly, symbols aligning with his speech, as if translating his memory into light. Each scar along his body glowed brighter, pulsing in time with his words, until the entire room felt as if it were standing inside a heartbeat. The soldiers shifted uneasily, gripping their weapons tighter. One of them muttered, "This is wrong. He is not just human. He is something else, something the galaxy was right to fear." But even as he spoke, his eyes betrayed a strange awe because despite the fear, no one could deny the strength radiating from the broken figure on the table. Dr. Alara refused to look away. She studied the images appearing on the console. She recognized one symbol that repeated again and again, a crest of sharp lines forming the mark of a forgotten empire. Her heart clenched. She remembered seeing it once in an old forbidden archive, an emblem marked only with a warning, "Do not seek." She realized now that the Council had erased more than just history. They had erased an entire legacy. And yet here it was, reborn in front of her. The machine emitted a sudden shriek, a high-pitched tone that made everyone flinch. Then it went dark once more, this time for good. Its circuits burned out completely. The air smelled of metal and ozone, and the silence afterward was heavier than before. Every eye in the room returned to the survivor, who now lay quiet again, his breathing steady, as though he had merely exhaled his memories into the room. Alara turned to her staff, her voice steady though her heart thundered. "This man is not just a patient. He is a key. His scars are not marks of pain. They are a map, a history written in flesh." Her words were heavy, and though the nurses trembled, none dared to deny her. They too had seen what she had seen, and none could ever forget it. One of the younger medics spoke in a shaking voice. "Doctor, if the Council learns of this, they will not let him live. They will erase him, erase us, erase everything connected," another added. "This is not healing anymore. This is treason." The words struck deep, and for a moment the weight of fear pressed down on them all. To hide this man was to defy the Council, and defiance meant death. But Alara lifted her chin, her voice sharp as steel. "If the Council feared him enough to erase his people from history, then the truth is more important than their fear. He survived, and he survived for a reason. We cannot bury him again." Her conviction lit a spark in her team. Some still shook with fear, but others stood straighter. Knowing their choice had already been made, the soldiers exchanged dark glances. Their orders were clear: report everything no matter what. Yet even they hesitated. Caught between duty and the weight of what they had witnessed, one finally muttered, "If he really is the last of them, then killing him would be killing history itself." The other said nothing, but the grip on his weapon loosened. The medical bay returned to silence, broken only by the sound of the survivor's slow breaths. His scars dimmed again, their glow fading into quiet slumber. But the memory of what they had seen remained etched in every mind. Dr. Alara knew the path ahead was dangerous, perhaps even fatal. But she also knew there was no turning back. The galaxy had tried to erase Civilization X, yet one of its children had endured, and his existence would change everything. And as the station's lights flickered one final time, as if warning them all of storms to come, Alara realized something chilling. If one survivor remained, then perhaps others did too. And if they were still out there, hidden among the stars, then the galaxy's greatest fear had only been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to awaken again. Awakening of the survivor. The medical bay was still heavy with the echoes of the strange visions the machine had projected. The staff moved in silence, each one haunted by the forbidden history they had glimpsed. For hours the survivor remained motionless, his chest rising and falling in the slow rhythm of deep sleep. The glow of his scars had dimmed almost completely, but none could forget how bright they had burned when the ancient words had poured from his lips. It felt as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable moment when he would finally wake. Dr. Alara had not left his side. She sat on a small stool near the table, her eyes fixed on the faint movement of his chest. She could not ignore the strange pull she felt toward him. It was not attraction, nor fear, but something else. Something that whispered that she was sitting beside a storm hidden in human skin. She wondered how many lifetimes he had lived, how many wars he had survived, how many times he had stood against the end only to rise again. The idea that one man could carry the memories of an entire civilization carved into his flesh made her skin crawl and her heart race at the same time. The soldiers at the door kept watch. Their discipline was breaking, and every so often one would mutter under his breath, "This should not be happening," or, "If he wakes up, what then?" They tried to act calm, but their hands rested too tightly on their weapons, not out of duty, but out of instinct. They knew the man on the table was more dangerous than any armed enemy they had ever faced. He had already survived battles that should have ended him. What would he do now that he was conscious? Hours stretched into what felt like days, until at last the survivor's body stirred. His hand twitched first, then his head shifted slightly, and a low groan escaped his throat. The medics rushed to check his vitals, but their machines reacted strangely again, flickering between stable and unstable, as if unsure whether he belonged to life or death. The glow of his scars flared briefly, faint pulses of light running across his chest like signals. Dr. Alara leaned forward, her voice steady but quiet. "You're safe. You're in a medical bay." Her words were calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for his wrist. She felt the heat of his skin through her gloves, hotter than any normal human. The survivor's breathing deepened, his chest rising with force, and then his eyes opened. The room froze. Every medic, every soldier, held their breath as the man's gaze swept across them. His eyes were not like theirs. They were human in shape, yet carried a depth that seemed endless. A storm of memories and battles burned behind them. His stare was both tired and unbreakable, like someone who had seen death countless times and returned from it each time. His gaze finally fixed on Alara, and for the first time she felt small, as though standing before something far greater than herself. His lips parted, and a voice emerged, rough and heavy. Each word sounded like it carried centuries of weight. He did not speak standard, not at first. Instead, he whispered in that strange tongue, and though no one understood, they all felt the meaning in their bones. The medics shivered, as if the very sound of his words touched their souls. Then, slowly, brokenly, he shifted, struggling to form words in standard, His accent was jagged but clear enough. "Where am I?" Ilara swallowed, forcing her voice to remain calm. "You are safe on a galactic medical station. You were found on the battlefield." His eyes flickered as though searching for memory, and then he whispered again, "Battlefield. Yes, there was fire, there was death. I remember." His gaze drifted to his own chest, to the scars that glowed faintly. He lifted one trembling hand to trace them with his fingers. His expression hardened, as though every mark reminded him of something too heavy to bear. One soldier stepped forward cautiously, his voice steady but firm. "Who are you? What are you?" The survivor's head turned slowly, his eyes meeting the soldier's. For a long moment he said nothing. Then a thin, bitter smile touched his lips. "I am what your machines already told you," he whispered. His voice was low, but everyone heard it. "I am the last of my kind. I am from the world you burned from the stars. I am Civilization X." The air turned to stone. The medics froze, the soldiers shifted uneasily. No one dared speak. It was one thing to see the words on a machine, but another to hear the man himself claim them. The weight of history pressed down on their chests. Making it hard to breathe, Ilara finally spoke, her voice breaking the silence. "But that is impossible. Civilization X was destroyed long ago. They left nothing behind, not even ruins. How can you be alive?" The survivor's smile faded, and his eyes grew distant. "Destroyed, yes. Erased, yes, but not forgotten. Not by me." He closed his eyes for a moment, his voice low and steady. "I saw the flames consume my world. I saw the sky burn. I felt the ground crack. I heard the screams of my people as they fell one by one. I should have died with them, but death refused me. It has always refused me." The medics exchanged fearful looks. Some whispered that no one could have lived through such destruction, but the conviction in his voice left no room for doubt. He was not inventing tales. He was reliving them, his hand clenched into a fist, the scars on his arm glowing brighter. "Your council thought they had erased us. They thought their fear and their lies would bury us forever. But I am still here. And if I am here, then the truth is not gone. The truth will always return." The soldiers looked to Ilara, their eyes questioning. Should they restrain him? Should they call for higher authority? But Ilara raised her hand, silencing them. Her instincts told her that to chain this man would be like chaining history itself. He was not a patient anymore. He was a storm disguised as flesh, and storms could not be contained without consequences. The survivor leaned back against the table, his breath heavy. His eyes burned with fire even as his body trembled from weakness. "You saved me," he said slowly. "But saving me has marked you. They will come. They will not allow me to exist. Not again. Not ever." His warning sank deep into their bones. The medics felt the weight of the council's shadow already creeping toward them, and in that moment, every person in the medical bay realized that their lives had changed forever. The survivor of Civilization X had awakened. His scars were not only proof of battles past, they were promises of battles yet to come. The fear of the council. The news traveled faster than Dr. Ilara could contain it. Even though she and her team had sworn silence, whispers slipped into the corridors. Soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Nurses muttered behind closed doors, and before long, fragments of the truth reached ears far beyond the medical bay. The Galactic Council had ways of knowing things that no one wished them to know. Their agents thrived on secrets, and secrets never stayed buried for long. Ilara sensed it the moment she walked into the bay the next morning. The lights seemed too bright, the air too heavy, and the guards posted outside were no longer the ordinary patrols. These were enforcers, silent, armored, their faces hidden behind black visors. They did not speak, but their presence alone was a warning. The council knew something, maybe not everything, but enough to be dangerous. Inside, the survivor sat upright now, though his body still bore the marks of endless battles. His eyes had lost none of their fire, and he watched the room with calm awareness. Every scar across his skin seemed sharper in the sterile light, As if the very mention of the council brought his body to life, the medics whispered among themselves, fear pulling at their voices. Some wanted to obey protocol and hand him over immediately. Others wanted to fight for his protection, but none could agree. The survivor noticed their unease and finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "They are coming. I can feel it." His words sent a ripple of dread through the room. "Your council does not forgive what it fears. It erases, it silences. That is what it did to my people, and that is what it will do again if you let it." He closed his eyes briefly, as though seeing the past overlaying the present. "I have lived this before. I know the pattern." Dr. Alara stepped closer. Her voice hushed but determined. "If the council finds you, they will destroy you. But why are they so afraid? What is it about your people that made them erase everything, even your name, from history?" The survivor opened his eyes slowly, his stare fixed on her, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then his lips curved into the faintest shadow of a bitter smile. "Because we would not kneel, we did not fear them. We did not submit to their lies of peace and control. Civilization X was not destroyed because we were monsters. We were destroyed because we refused chains." The words struck deep. The medics exchanged uneasy glances, and even the soldiers at the door stiffened. None of them dared to question him, for his tone carried truth heavier than any evidence. It was the kind of truth that no authority could bury forever. Alara felt her chest tighten, for she realized that if the council knew he had spoken such words, their punishment would not stop with him. It would consume them all. Outside the medical bay, the council's agents moved silently, gathering reports, questioning staff, pulling data from every system. Already rumors spread across the station, rumors of a man covered in glowing scars, of a machine that spoke a forbidden name, of history clawing its way back into the present. Some dismissed the whispers as fear-driven lies, but others believed, and belief was more dangerous than any weapon. That night, the council itself convened in the grand chamber of glass and steel. Representatives of countless species sat in uneasy silence. The high speaker, cloaked in silver, stood at the center, his voice echoing coldly. "Reports have reached us of a patient in Sector 12's medical wing. A man whose body defies our science. A man who carries marks that should not exist. Our scanners confirm the name Civilization X." The chamber erupted in low murmurs. Fear bleeding into the air, one counselor pounded the table, his voice trembling. "If this is true, then the purge was incomplete, and we are all in danger," another hissed. "We swore no trace would remain. How could this have happened?" The high speaker raised his hand for silence. "It does not matter how, what matters is now. We cannot allow a survivor to exist. His presence threatens everything. Our control, our unity, our truth. He must be taken, and he must be erased." Back in the medical bay, Alara felt the pressure of unseen eyes upon her. The station's systems flickered as council protocols began to override her access. Already she knew the enforcers would arrive soon. She turned to the survivor, her voice urgent. "We do not have much time. If we do nothing, they will take you." The man's eyes burned with calm fire. "Let them come," he said softly. "They have taken everything from me before. They cannot take what I have become." His words were not boastful but heavy with experience, as though he had faced such threats countless times. Still, Alara knew this was not bravado. He was a survivor, and survival itself was his weapon. The medics stood frozen, caught between duty and conscience. One finally whispered, "If we defy the council—" "We are finished," another responded. "If we give him up, then history dies again." The conflict cracked their unity. Yet in their hearts they all felt the same truth. There was no safe path anymore. Whichever choice they made would decide their fate forever. The survivor shifted, pulling himself to the edge of the table. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his presence filled the room like thunder. "You fear the council because you do not understand them." "But I do," he said, his voice firm. "They are not gods. They are not eternal. They are afraid of voices that will not be silenced. afraid of truths that will not be buried. That is why they will come for me, and that is why they will come for you." Alara felt her resolve harden. She no longer saw a broken man in front of her. She saw a symbol, a survivor whose very existence defied the lies she had been taught all her life. And in that moment, she knew she could not give him up, even if it meant her own death. For the galaxy could not afford to bury the truth again. The medical bay lights flickered once more, and the sound of heavy boots echoed down the corridor outside. The enforcers were coming. The council's shadow was already at their door, and the choice had finally arrived. Protect the survivor and face the wrath of the most powerful authority in the galaxy, or surrender him and let history vanish once again into silence. As the doors shuddered under the approach of armored hands, every heart in the room beat with fear and anticipation. The survivor closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, the fire within them burned brighter than before. "The council fears me," he whispered, his voice sharp as a blade. "But they should fear what comes after me even more, the choice of humanity." The echo of armored boots filled the corridor outside the medical bay. Each step grew louder, heavier, like drums of judgment marching toward them. The medics and soldiers inside the bay stood frozen, fear clawing at their chests. They knew the council's enforcers had arrived, and with them came the power of law, fear, and silence. Once those doors opened, their choice would be forced. There would be no more hesitation. Dr. Alara's hands trembled as she adjusted the instruments near the survivor's table. She could hear the faint hiss of the door's locks being overridden. She knew the council had sent orders: secure the patient, erase the evidence, silence the witnesses. This was how the council ruled, not with mercy but with fear. And yet, as her eyes met the survivor's, she saw no fear in him. His scars glowed faintly again, and his gaze burned with calm defiance. He was not a man awaiting capture. He was a storm awaiting release. The survivor leaned forward, his voice steady though his body still trembled with weakness. "You must decide now. Will you surrender me to them and bury history once again? Or will you stand and carry the weight of truth, even if it costs your lives?" His words were not a plea. They were a challenge. His eyes swept across every person in the room, demanding an answer not with force but with presence. The youngest nurse shook her head, whispering, "If we fight, they will kill us all." "The council never forgives," another nurse, older and weary, countered. "If we give him up, we are no better than those who erased his people. We will become the very silence he warned us about." Their argument cracked the silence. Drawing others into its storm, voices rose, trembling, desperate. Torn between fear and conscience, the soldiers exchanged heavy glances. One finally spoke, his voice low. "Our orders are clear. We must obey the council, yet—" He hesitated, his eyes returning to the survivor. "Yet we saw him on the battlefield. He did not break. He fought when no man should have. He is not an enemy. He is something more. Maybe something the galaxy needs." The second soldier gritted his teeth. Torn between duty and instinct, his hand hovered near his weapon, not to draw it against the survivor, but against those waiting outside the door. Dr. Alara stood, her voice firm and sharp as steel. "Enough, we do not have time for fear. The council will open those doors in moments. If we give him to them, everything we have seen will be lost. The truth will vanish again, and one day we will regret that we were too afraid to stand." She looked at her team, at the soldiers, at the survivor himself. "I will not surrender him. I will not be part of another lie." The survivor's eyes softened for the first time. His voice lowered, carrying gratitude beneath its weight. "Then you have already chosen. You have chosen to be more than shadows. You have chosen to be human." His words struck deep, filling their hearts with fire. For in that moment, they realized the council might command the galaxy, but humanity still commanded choice. The hiss of the door filled the air as the enforcers breached it. The steel slid open, and black-armored figures poured inside, weapons raised. Their visors reflected the glow of the scars on the survivor's body. The lead enforcer's voice was cold and mechanical. "Step aside. Hand over the patient. This is an order of the Galactic Council." His tone carried no emotion, only the weight of authority. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The medics froze. The soldiers tightened their grips. Ilara stood tall, her eyes unyielding, and then, in a single moment of silent rebellion, the younger soldier stepped forward. Placing himself between the survivor and the enforcers, his weapon pointed outward. Not at his patient, but at those who demanded his capture. "No," he said, his voice breaking but strong. "Not this time." The room erupted in chaos. The enforcers raised their rifles, the medics gasped. Ilara shouted, "Hold your ground," and the survivor's scars burst into light. Brighter than ever before, the glow spread across his body. Pulsing like fire unleashed, the enforcers faltered for a moment, blinded and unsettled by the sudden blaze, and in that hesitation, the impossible happened. The survivor stood. His body trembled but did not fall. His presence filled the room like thunder rolling through mountains. His voice boomed, low and steady. "You tried to erase me. You tried to bury my people in silence, but I am still here, and I will not kneel." His scars flared, casting shadows across the walls, and for the first time, even the enforcers stepped back. Their composure cracking, Dr. Ilara felt her heart race. She knew they could not hold the council off forever, but she also knew this moment was history being written before her eyes. The choice had been made. Humanity had chosen not to kneel. They had chosen to protect the survivor, not because they could win, but because some truths were worth defying even the strongest power. The lead enforcer's voice wavered, though he tried to remain cold. "You cannot fight the council. You will all be destroyed." The survivor's gaze pierced through the black visor, his tone carrying both sorrow and defiance. "Then let them destroy me, but they will never destroy what I am. They will never destroy the truth carved into my scars." The tension snapped like a drawn bowstring. Soldiers, medics, survivor, and enforcers all stood on the edge of history. In that charged silence, the choice had already been made. Not with weapons or orders, but with hearts and courage. Humanity had chosen to stand beside a survivor of the extinct, even if it meant their end. The air trembled with the weight of the moment, and as the glow of the survivor's scars lit the faces of all around him, one truth became clear. Civilization X had not died. It lived on in him, and now it lived on in those who chose to protect him. The council's fear was justified, for history itself had awakened, and it would not sleep again.